Before we start today's video, I'd like to make a shout out for Volcity Frost 21. He's a gaming YouTuber, kind of like me. He does Rainbow Six Siege videos along with Fallout 4 videos, so be sure to check him out, guys. And without further ado, let us begin. Hey guys, Colonel Colonist here, coming to you guys in a new video, and this will be the interview of the Big Chief. So here we go. So, Sean, how did you come up with the name Pixelnomial?
There's a couple of things that we ended up doing when we were coming up with a name. Well, the first thing is that we needed to figure out a name that not very many people had, if any at all. And so what we did was we created a word. So Pixelnomial is actually a bit of a combination of an equation that is would be known as a polynomial. So that's a type of equation, and what we did was we just stuck sort of the pixel in front of it to denote the digital nature of the work that we do. And so the reason why we wanted an original name was so that if we were finding websites or if we needed to register our business name and all those sorts of things, having a name or a word that doesn't exist makes it a lot easier to get all of those sorts of things passed and through.
And that's why it's a lot easier to search up Colonel Colonist, because how unique it is.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, how did your digital media company form?
So I actually graduated university in theater technical production. I was actually doing live theater stuff, and while I was at university, I started designing flyers and websites just on my own on the side in order to make a little bit of money. So that's how I got into the whole digital thing. So everything that I've done on the computer is self-taught. I've never done anything in school, so I didn't do any computer courses or anything like that. And so over the course of a few years, I ended up getting more and more clients. I ended up forming my first business, which was a company called Function 3. Function 3 was, there were 3 of us that were in it, and we did, like I said, graphic design and websites. And then over the course of time, that group broke up, and I ended up joining a company called GANs, in which they did Webkins and Tailtowns and other things. So there I ended up getting into user interface design and user experience design, and I met a whole bunch of people in the video game industry, and so continue that, and then that's where I met Kevin Ho and JC Capoletti, who are my 2 partners in the company. So when I left GANs, we sort of decided that there were a couple of things that we wanted to do that the companies that we were working for, they weren't doing, and so we formed our own company and started experimenting and doing our own stuff.
Cool. Do you have any goals for this company?
The goal really is just to create a small company that creates games and hardware and toys that integrate together. And so our company, what we're looking for is, building up to the size of about 15 or 20 people, in which everyone has a nice stable job, enjoys what they're doing, and can innovate and create, the things that make people happy.
What would you say to kids that want to create video games?
I would say that depending on the
genre?
Well, not just the genre, but depending on the sort of the job and the interest that you have, because there's so many different jobs within the video game industry, right? So things that people don't even necessarily think about. So as an example, if you start playing music at a young age, you usually think about playing music for maybe movies, or playing music in in a band or in a symphony or something like that. But now music is such a huge part of video games, right? So and then you end up having the development part of stuff. You have the art side of stuff. You have the management side of stuff. You have the business, social media elements. So I would say that one of the first things that you do, make sure that you enjoy playing video games. See whether or not there's an area in video games that might be lacking. So if you enjoy playing video games, but you notice that the direction that certain video games are going, and that there's a sort of a space for a new idea, those are the sorts of things that you can definitely work towards. And so playing video games, talking to people who actually make them, And then once you get into high school and stuff like that, go online. Everything that I've learned with regards to programming or even the management of video games and those sorts of things come from a large portion that come from online. So definitely find schools that might have programs that are interesting to you, and then and just explore and talk to people.
How often do you use Photoshop and Photoshop-related applications during the creation of media, video games, websites, 3D printed figures, etc.?
Okay, so Photoshop itself, you use that quite often, especially with regards to the original creation of things. So when you actually come up with concepts, and design, that's a huge element. So a lot of logo design and concept art is done in Photoshop. So a lot of the preliminary elements. The other thing that Photoshop is really good for is doing things like the texturing of 3D objects. So the way that a character is painted or a building is painted and all those sorts of things. So we use Photoshop quite extensively. But beyond that, we actually use the entire Adobe library. So I use, especially for interface design, Illustrator quite extensively because of the vector graphic nature of it rather than the raster graphic of Photoshop. If you end up changing the size of Photoshop images, you end up having a lot of pixelation, and so you got to always keep in mind that when using Photoshop that you work at a much larger resolution and then bring it down to size. But if you're using something like Illustrator, none of that's an issue. So depending on the use, so if you're using interface elements and those sorts of things, Illustrator is quite good. If you're doing texturing and graphic elements, Photoshop. So we actually use that whole entire Adobe library quite extensively.
So, for the closing question, do you like the reputation of your company or wish it was more well-known? For example, would you rather see your company flourish in popularity or keep it the way it is in terms of reputation?
So, we definitely want to build a little bit more recognition with regards to what we're doing. Right now, we're keeping it small and we're keeping it a little bit more quiet because there are things that we're developing in the background that we don't necessarily want people to know about just yet. But definitely, when we sort of get to a point where we're releasing these things, we do want to have at least a little bit more, well, quite a bit more acknowledgement of our capabilities and make sure that the games that we make are fun and that people enjoy them. So, I mean, like, at the end of the day, we're not looking to be famous. We're definitely not looking to knock other companies off their perches or anything like that. I think that the video game space has a lot of space for a ton of people to work in, and that you definitely don't want to see just 4 or 5 big companies that are dominating the landscape. You definitely want to have sort of medium, small, and large video game companies, thereby creating a variety of games that everyone will be able to find something that they enjoy.
Thank you for your time, Sean. We hope to hear from you again soon.
No problem. Great talking to you, Finn.